Sahana vavatu Sahano bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Dayakaram Dayakaram Dantam Dharma Pravartakam Pranamami Dayanandam Madacharya Param. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we are concluding the third chapter. It is interesting. Nearly just over a month has gone and we've managed this 3 chapters. But you've seen, the commitment with 4 classes a week. You can see the flow of the Gita. And Krishna was talking about desires, very interesting section in this final concluding verses of the 3rd chapter. So we had seen, audio is low. Is it for everybody? Audio is low? No, other people can hear. So, so anyway, we had seen in these final verses that Bhagavan was talking about how to manage desires. So he had talked about 3 types of desires, 3 levels of desires. We saw the fire covered by the smoke. We saw the dirt covering the mirror. And we saw the final very strong binding desire, which is like a fetus in the womb, covering, the womb is the covering of your Viveka Shakti or your discriminative capacity. And sometimes desire is so strong that only when we give birth to that desire will we have relief from it. While we're carrying the desire with us, it is really painful. It is uncomfortable for a pregnant mother, right, to carry that baby. So in the same way, uncomfortable to have a very strong desire. So due to the force, Bhagavan says you may have to fulfill, but always keep dharma in view. And he says these 3-fold way of covering your Viveka Shakti, your discriminative capacity, tenedam vairina idam avritam. They are like your enemies. They rob your capacity to think and see clearly. So he continues with the next verse, warning us. He says, Avritam jnanametena jnanino nitya vairina kamarupena kaunteya dushpurena nalena cha. Etena kamena idam jnanam avritam. This Viveka Shakti, this discriminative power that you're born with, the intellect, which differentiates you from other beings in this universe, is covered by this, he says again, kamena, this binding desire. Because we have seen it is mahashanaha, it keeps eating away at your life. It's a glutton. So even if you fulfill all the list of desires you have in this moment, what happens? Another list is already waiting to come up, because the very source of desire has not been addressed. The very reason for desire to arise is because the lack of feeling of satisfaction with yourself. We are not, we don't feel purnam, whole. We don't feel complete. There's always a niggling sense of lack in life. And that is the niggling sense of lack that keeps us chasing after things, objects, people, situations to make us feel complete. So, what we really love is that sense of completeness. But the Shastra and Krishna in the Gita, he also emphasizes as long as that sense of inadequacy is there, you will keep fulfilling desire after desire after desire to feel fulfilled, and it will be a never ending list. And again, you go off in this life, come back in another life, do the same thing. So, jnanam in this verse is talking about the possibility of gaining knowledge is covered also by desire. And knowledge that has already been gained, the spiritual wisdom, will not get assimilated when your intellect, your Viveka Shakti gets covered. You forget even why you started spiritual life in the first place, because you get sucked into the world of desires again. So Bhagavan says, Jnaninaha Nitya Vairina, which means understand this karma to be the permanent enemy of the wise. And he uses that word, enemy. It is inimical to you because it is a trap in your spiritual pursuit. There's no beginning to it, there's no end to it. So it is an incessant enemy to knowledge. So Bhagavan says here, be very careful. The one without wisdom, the one who cannot discriminate, will waste time like this in the whole life, fulfilling the desire. Then what? You recognize after the fulfillment, oh, it's useless. Now I'm again bored. Now I'm again having to fulfill another desire. Now I don't have permanent satisfaction again. At the time of desiring, Krishna says, think of it then. Think of what this desire fulfillment is going to give you. Is it going to give you total satisfaction? If the mind fools you and tells you, yes, you're going to be fully satisfied, the free will and the intellect has to come in. Don't fall for the trickery of the mind. So Krishna advises, for people on the spiritual path, beware. Viveka is essential for the knowledge of the Shastra of Vedanta to sink in. Otherwise, he says, dushpurena analena, very difficult to satiate this kama. We have seen this idea in previous verse. He is reiterating because it is a very important thing to ingrain into our mind. It is very, very difficult, first of all, to fulfill. So desire doesn't say ever enough, enough, enough. It is, first of all, alam navidyate. We saw that the more you feed it, the more it grows. It never says enough. And he says dukkena puranam, which means that it is also difficult to fulfill desires. Because first you spend time, energy, resources, finance to acquire something. Then all your mind goes on retaining what is a source of happiness for you. You don't want to lose it. But ultimately, we end up, losing it as well. So loss, there are three pains that the texts advise you to look at with desire. One is the pain of acquisition, pain of retention, pain of loss. And the pain of loss is very, very difficult to assimilate. So Bhagavan says, inquire into the nature of desire. See for yourself. Now, Krishna will continue to show how can I nip this desire in the bud? How do I manage my desires? What is the basis for desire? What covers the capacity to discern? So all these questions he answers in the final verses. From where does desire operate? Does it have a location? Because once I know the location of my enemy, they cannot ambush me in any way, right? In the same way, he says, desire is your enemy. If you know the location of the desires, it is easy to handle them. So now he talks about the location. He says, Indriyani mano buddhihi asyadishthanamuchyate eter vimohayatyesha jnanamavritya dehinam. The first location of the operation of desire is indriyani. So all our battles with desire begin on the sensory level. Because these 5 indriyas, these are sensory organs. They are the 5 entry gates into your mind and your body. So kama, desire, as though enters through the senses. In fact, it's already within you. The external objects of the world trigger the desire already in you. But they are the first instruments for thoughts of desire to arise in the mind. Because you see an object, generally it's through sight. When you see an object, there could be a desire to possess that object. There could also be a desire to avoid that object. Both are desires, right? Whether you want to possess it, whether you want to avoid it, both are desires, positive and negative. So Bhagavan says here, you need to formulate a strategy on the initial level to ward off this desire arising in the mind in the first place. The next level of operation, he says, is the manaha, because it's the mind that registers all the sense objects. So sometimes, the senses bring in this data, suddenly the mind wants to experience that sense object. So there's a, first of all, with the reaction to the external world, but the mind has another great capacity. What is that? To imagine from memories. Desires can arise out of experiences born of the past. Memory also can give rise to desires. Because if I've tried chocolate ice cream, there was a very nice dessert on the flight, actually, a fantastic chocolate dessert. I've never tasted anything like it. This morning it arose in the mind, that chocolate dessert. It is from memory. So the re-experience is what? Because I already enjoyed the taste on the flight, and the desire wants to re-experience, right? So it's like a recording device, the mind. When there is a pleasure that you derive from any object external, it is registered in the recording device of the mind, stored in the chittam, which is memory, and the like has already developed. Dislike also develops towards objects of dislike. Both disturb the mind. So what happens is that you want to re-experience. So the second level of operation of desire, Krishna says, is the mind. Be careful of storing things in your mind. Things get stored when you add an emotion behind the experience. If you don't have an emotion behind your experience, things just come out of the mind. But the emotion is because of what we call in Sanskrit Shobhana Adhyasa. Shobhana Adhyasa is a very interesting concept. It is adding an extra value to something more than it deserves. So Shobhana Adhyasa is adding an extra value to things of the world more than they deserve. What does that mean? You are convinced this object or this experience will make you happy. You're putting all your, we say in English, you put all your eggs in one basket. So you put all your happiness on that, you project it on the external object. But it is not so easy, because that object may give you pleasure one moment, but Krishna goes on to say in a future verse, the same object can be a source of pain for you as well. Adyantakvanta kaunteya nateshu ramate buddhaha. It has a beginning and end, and the wise people don't revel in sense pleasures because it has dukkha yonaya evate. It has a seed, a potential to trigger unhappiness in you. Everything in this world is built that way. It can trigger happiness, and it has the potential to trigger unhappiness. We look, best thing is to look back at experiences and see for yourself. So the Shobhana Adhyasa is a projection onto the external world, thinking this object, person, situation will bring me happiness 24/7. That is called Shobhana Adhyasa. The mind does it a lot. We have to be aware of it. Krishna says, be aware of it. So he says, mind is the next level where you can watch your desire. And how do you watch the desire? From the level of the intellect. So the third level of operation is intellect. Intellect is also a basis from which your desires operate, because it is the intellect alone, the seat of the I thought, which decides to follow the desire or not, right? It is the I thought that says, okay, I'm going to go after this, or I'm not going to go after this. Without your intellect backing your mind, the desire has no hold over you. So the intellect has to go along with the mind. So the battle, battle in all is between the power of the intellect and the power of the mind. This is the perennial battle. So Krishna says here, adhishtanam, these are the bases for desire. First base, second base. First base is senses. Second base, it gets more difficult to manage desire. Second base is mind. Third base, very tough, which is intellect. And these three bases are like fertilizers for your desires to grow. So desire, if left without some inquiry, will multiply and grow. Dehinam eshaha vimohayati, he says, this person who is under the sway of these desires gets deluded, thinking, I'll be fine, I'll be free, I'll be okay if I fulfill this one more desire. But you are never fine or okay, because we know Prakriti drives us, and there is no control over our wants that arise in the mind. But Krishna says, don't come under their sway. He's already warned us in the 3rd chapter, curtail your sense pursuits at will. Your willpower has to back your sense pursuit. You can practice this. It is a qualification for a spiritual aspirant. It is called Dhamma, reigning in the organs of actions, reigning in the sense powers in the initial stages, because jnanam avritya dehinam, eventually if you go along with them, they will cover your discriminative power and you will become trapped in this samsaric cycle. So this is, Krishna's big warning at the end of the 3rd chapter. See the limitations of sense pleasure. See the limitations of sense fulfillment. There is a huge list, lists given in various texts. But the 3 major limitations that we can take up is that atriptikaram, which means nothing ever satisfies for good, because you are left wanting more and more and more. Atriptikaram. Remember, when your mind wants to go after something, it is not going to satisfy me for good. The second limitation is bandhakatvam. When something becomes a source of pleasure, it can lead to enslavement. This enslavement means that object, if it's not there in your life, you panic. If it is, it has to be there constantly for you to feel, full and complete. Bandhakatvam. And the third limitation we've seen is that dukkha mishritvam. Everything has a potential of pain. So a same object that gives you so much pleasure can give you so much pain. So this is how we challenge our thoughts. This is the tools that Krishna gives to challenge your desires. Now, Bhagavan gives us advice on how to handle the eternal enemy of karma. He says, Tasmat tvam indriyan yadav niyamya bharatarshaba papmanam prajahihyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Tasmat tvam indriyan yadav niyamya. This is important, therefore. Tasmat means therefore. Because the binding desire covers your discriminative capacity. Therefore, O Arjuna, O seeker of spiritual wisdom, master your sense organs. Develop Dhamma. Master the sense organs. Understand them first, then master. Papmanam prajahihyenam, he says, eliminate this binding desire from your life. Eliminate through knowledge. Don't suppress it. Eliminate through understanding, because you are not a slave to your senses and mind. This requires constant alertness on our part, because we have to understand also, do we really want to live all our life dependent on externals, addicted to externals? If I ask any of you, would you like to live your life always your happiness depends on your desires being fulfilled or not? That's called dependent on externals. Do we want to spend our whole life like this? I'm sure everybody will say no. So here, that is why Krishna says to Arjuna, give up this through knowledge. Keep seeing, keep bringing in the teachings. Soon as desire arises, be aware, bring in the knowledge of limitations, and you will develop more and more inner space. In fact, that is what Krishna is trying to do here. You will have more inner space in life, because you will be so free inside, you can choose to pursue the desire or not that the desire takes you for a ride. So alertness, if we don't have jnana vijnana nashanam, he says, this way of life will destroy you ultimately. It will destroy your knowledge. It will destroy your ability to assimilate Vedanta. It will destroy your Viveka Shakti, your ability to discriminate between right and wrong even. And all your Shravanam, the listening of the teachings, is gone to waste. So in next verse, Krishna says all the whole teaching of the scriptures is given in the next verse. How do I master all of these three levels? He says, Indriyani paranyahuhu, indriyebhyah param manaha, manasastu para buddhihi, yo buddhev paratastu saha. This is a very important verse. When you consider something, you can only do so from a higher level, from a superior level. So when you want to conquer something, you cannot conquer it on the same level. You have to take yourself one step above. So this is taking one step above verse, the next few verses. It is impossible when you remain on the same level. So he says, Indriyani paranyahuhu, as compared to your body, senses are superior. So your senses, the jnanendriyani, are superior to your karmendriyani, which are organs of actions. So your sense powers can manage your organs of actions. And you'll see, the texts always, Vedanta moves from the gross to the subtle. So we begin first with the grossest, which is the most solid, most dense. The senses can objectify the body. If the physical body can be objectified by the senses, which is more powerful, the body or the senses? It has to be the senses. So the senses objectify the physical body. So when you understand this, you can master your body, you can master your organs of action. In the same manner, Krishna says, Indriyebhyah param manaha, what is more superior to the sense organs? What objectifies your sense organs? The mind. The mind sees the sense powers, right? The mind can go where senses cannot. It is more subtle. So the mind can even create a dream world. Your senses can only travel, to a certain extent. Eyesight can only extend to a certain extent, smell, sound, unless you have extra sensory perception. Those are powers that you can develop. But generally, we only have certain orbit for a sense operation. But mind is more powerful, because it can travel to the moon and back. Just in a thought, you close your eyes, you can imagine anywhere in the world, you can go anywhere. So the mind is more powerful, Krishna says, than the senses. Senses are more powerful than the physical body. The mind is more powerful than the senses. The senses are in the hands of the mind. So use that mind to manage the senses. The mind can be used as an instrument to protect the senses from going out. This is what he is telling us here. From the level of the mind, take yourself up. Then you are able to manage your senses. You have risen above these senses. So stepping out of the senses, stepping into the mind, that is also not the last level of stepping out. Manasastu parabuddhihi. Step out even further. Superior to your mind is what? Your intellect. Nishchayatmika antahkarana vrittihi. The thought of clarity, the thoughts of decision, the thoughts of lack of doubt, all of this is intellect. Whereas the manaha aspect of thought is sankalpa vikalpa, which means constantly fluctuating. Should I not? Did I not? And in Hamlet, Shakespeare beautifully, Hamlet says, right, to be or not to be. That is the manaha aspect, right? To eat or not to eat, to go out or not to go out. This is all the manaha aspect of thinking. But intellect can master that doubtful mind. So with the reference to the mind, intellect is superior. Intellect is much superior. So Bhagavan says, develop that space between mind and intellect. Now you can see on all levels, space is being developed if I make efforts. But manasastu parabuddhihi, because the buddhi is able to dismiss the doubts of the mind with proper knowledge, the buddhi is more powerful to address your desires. The kama, desires which are located in the mind, can definitely be handled by the intellect if you are aware. That becomes a very important sentence. Only when you are aware can you manage. If you live life mechanically, constantly living out that way, the desires, then you can never manage the desires. So you have to come out of the desires to see the desires in order to manage the desires. What if desire, because desire, Krishna has said, operates on level of intellect also. I want this. I need this. I don't want this. I have to get rid of this. How do I master that intellect, which is already the I thought backing the desire? So Bhagavan gives one last level of mastery. Beyond this level of mastery, you cannot gain any other mastery. He says, Yo buddhev paratastu saha. What is more superior to your intellect? It is Atma, consciousness. In fact, you can't even put them all in the same basket, because Atma is a different order of reality. It is more subtle. It is more superior than the intellect, the mind, and the senses. It is that Saha he uses in this verse. It is that Atma which manages everything, because without Atma, the I thought itself cannot function. How do I handle the intellect? It is only by seeing that I thought is also false you. That I thought that you want the fulfillment for, because what do you want fulfillment for? It is not for Atma. Atma is already the form of fulfillment. It is the form of completeness. You want to fulfill your I thought. So Krishna says, rise above the I thought, understand who you truly are, then desires are like fangless snakes. They cannot affect you at all. I am, Adi Shankaracharya, in a very beautiful stotra, a verse, a hymn, he chants, he asks you to chant. It is called Nirvana Shatkam. There are other names for it, but he says in the first verse, Mano buddhyahankara chittani naham nacha shrotra jihve nacha grana netre nacha vyoma Bhumir na cha tejo na vayuh chidananda rupaha Shivoham, Shivoham, Chidananda Rupaha, Shivoham, Shivoham. He says that, in this verse, I am not the senses, I am not the mind, I am not the intellect, I am not many things, I'm not all big lists he gives here, but he says, what at the end, what am I in reality? Chidananda Rupam, I am the form of Chit, Ananda. I am in the form of that consciousness that lights everything else up. Shivoham, the most auspicious. Shivaha aham, I am in the form of that Shivaha. I am that pure, limitless consciousness. When I discover that, thoughts can no longer take me for a ride because I am objectifying the intellect. I objectify the mind. I have finally discovered the inner space to handle desire very, very easily. Identified with the instruments, the locations of desire, I cannot master my desires. That is the whole key here. Living on the level of the body, mind, senses, I cannot master my desires. When I bring myself out, I see myself from Sakshi, the eternal witness. I can objectify my desire. And mastering means handling the binding desire located on the sense level, the mind level, the intellect level. So the ultimate solution now Krishna gives, bringing in this jnanam again, which will next chapter he will introduce like this. There's always a connection between the conclusion of one chapter and the beginning of the other. So Krishna says here, you have to gain knowledge of Atma to finally eradicate all desires from the mind, because the desires cannot affect you with knowledge of Atma. So he finally, in this last verse of the third chapter, he sums up with a final piece of advice, again exhorting Arjuna, all of us, to discover Atma. He says, Evam buddhev param buddhva samstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatram mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Develop the space between the senses and I, between the mind and I, between the intellect and finally between I and Atma. So the I itself gets objectified, right? So Buddhev Param Buddhva, knowing that which is superior to your intellect, which is consciousness, which objectifies the intellect, you master your desires finally. Atma is the only reality, in fact. Everything else we know, that word is mithya. Atma is satyam. The whole universe, including my body, mind, sense complex, is a projection on the satyam, on the Atma. So you cannot really compare, because one is the absolute reality and the other is a transactional reality. Body, mind, senses are only transactional you. You don't actually exist in reality as body, mind, senses. You are the pure, limitless consciousness. He says that Atmanam samstabhya atmana. Using here, Atma is not the consciousness. That's why in some of the sentences you have to interpret according to the tradition. Atmana samstabhya atmanam, which means by using the intellect, using your knowledge, master the desires on the mental and sensory levels and live this life of karma yoga, this lifestyle. Practice dhamma, reining in of the senses. Practice shama, watching your patterns of thought, resolving your desires as they rise. Practice it. So kama, desire, will never become a source of unhappiness for you. And with this, he gives Arjuna a final pep talk. He says, Jahi Shatram Mahabaho. Defeat this enemy. This enemy is not on the battlefield of Mahabharata. The real enemy is within you, O Arjuna. Defeat this enemy for your spiritual discovery, for your spiritual success. Kama rupam durasadam. Desire is not a simple enemy. It is a very difficult enemy to understand. But you alone can handle this enemy. Arjuna, this desire can appear at any time in life. You know, there's a story of when the churning of the Milky Ocean. There is a story in the Puranas. The gods and the demons were churning the Milky Ocean for the nectar of immortality. And when they churned this Milky Ocean, the asuras or the demons managed to get the nectar. I mean, it's a long story, but the gods were terrified. You know, the demons are going to get the nectar of immortality. So they asked Vishnu to help. So he took the form of a very alluring woman. Vishnu turned himself to what is called Mohini. Mohini means one who grabs your mind. She deludes your mind. Moha. Moha. So actually Mohini, sorry for anybody called Mohini. Some people are called Mohini, but the one who deludes the mind, the one who grabs your mind, Vishnu takes on that form, and the asuras, the demons, become enamored by that form and they forget the nectar. So that lady, Vishnu, in the form of that Mohini, takes away the nectar and gives it to the god. So desire is like that. Before you know it, you've got the nectar of immortality in your hand. Then the Mohini of Maya in the world, some sense object, something may come along and you get distracted from your goal. So Krishna warns in this chapter, be careful, discover the space in yourself, don't get distracted, don't get fooled by the mind, don't go off track, because before you know it, time flies, right? Every day, one day gone, and the sands of time are again flowing very quickly. So don't lose this chance. Krishna says, you will discover, Arjuna, if you follow my words. We saw this in the 3rd chapter. Follow my teaching and it will work for you. So with this, we finish the 3rd chapter. Om Tat Sat Iti Śrīmad Bhagavad Gītāsu Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Karma Yogo Nama Tritiyodhyayaha. So I thought I will give a very brief summary. I've made a summary document because this chapter is very important, Karma Yoga, and you can keep that summary, the soft copy or hard copy, and refer to it whenever you need to. So just to refresh what we have seen in this chapter, the chapter begins with a doubt by Arjuna. If you remember, he says, Jayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janadana. What is his doubt? And the second verse also, he continues his doubt. Tadekam vada nishchitya yena shreyo ham apnuyam vyamishrene vakyena buddhim mohayasiva me. Why is he confused at the beginning of the 3rd chapter? Because in the 2nd chapter, Krishna had highlighted the importance of self-knowledge, right? He had not highlighted karma. He had brought up karma yoga. He had brought up the topic of karma yoga, but he had not highlighted it fully there. He had emphasized on knowledge. That's why 2nd chapter is called Sankhya Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, subject of knowledge. But then at the end of the 2nd chapter, what does Krishna say? Okay, get up and fight. So Arjuna is asked, he says, I'm as though confused. I've not really understood. You told me, knowledge is the key, but you tell me go and do karma. And he says, it's not just any ordinary karma. It is a gruesome, cruel karma, killing. You're asking me to get up and do that. So he wants to know, he tells Krishna very clearly, tell me for sure, nishchitya, tell me for definite, what is the best way to gain moksha? What is it? And this is the very beautiful way that chapter 3 begins, because Krishna, the teacher, understands that the student has not really understood. So he is not, impatient. He's not angry. He gives a whole chapter trying to explain to Arjuna. So he tells Arjuna what is the role of karma yoga in discovering moksha. And he begins this chapter with this verse, Lokesmin dvivida nishtha pura prokta mayanagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. In this verse, it's a very important verse, I think third verse of the third chapter, he says that there are no four paths here. Many times we read four paths, Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga. There's no four distinct paths, because Krishna says there's only two lifestyles to discover the self. One is renunciate lifestyle, where you pursue jnanam exclusively. And that requires a lot of space in the mind to do that. You drop out of competition, you drop out of roles in society, and you're exclusively for this knowledge. And he gives another choice. If you're not ready for that, then live in the world, be with your family, but study alongside your duties in life. So he gives another option. There is nothing wrong with that. In fact, most people Krishna highlights are in this pursuit, the karma yoga lifestyle. And one is not really superior to another, because both have moksha as the goal. So Jnana Yogi will have moksha as the goal. Karma Yogi will also have moksha as the goal. But the difference is a Karma Yogi will mainly have a householder lifestyle. So Karma Yoga is for people who have children, married, they're doing their employment in the world. But it does not mean you cannot gain knowledge. So from the 4th to 9th verse, Krishna also tells us, because he understands that Arjuna is confused with regard to actionlessness and inaction. So Krishna begins the chapter 4th to 9th verse by saying that becoming contemplative, following this sannyasa or the renunciate life, is not for everybody. It takes time. And he says, people cannot stop acting. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krita. We're not able to sit still without some activity. It is very difficult to sit still. Because in this verse, he says that even if you sit still, you will be pushed into performing activity through the force of Prakriti. So he brings in this idea of material nature of body, mind, senses. This material nature, Prakriti, will drive you into activity, because that comprises of three gunas, three qualities. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. We will see that more in the 14th chapter. But you will be pushed. Understand, you will be pushed into activity. In actionlessness, there is no doership. So Arjuna is confusing this non-doership with doership, actually. In actionlessness, there is no doership. In inaction, is there doership? Am I still retaining doership in inaction? Yes, because I choose not to act. Doership means I choose. In actionlessness, there's no choice. Light does not choose to shine or not. The nature is to shine, right? You go and see a light bulb saying, oh, I don't shine. I don't want to go on today. If you switch it on, it shines. You don't see the sun choosing to shine. The nature is to shine. That is called actionlessness. There's no doership. Whereas in inaction, you choose not to act. That is the difference. So this is Arjuna's doubt. Krishna says, no, you have to act. In the 6th verse, he says, if you pretend you cannot act, if you sit quietly, but you're dreaming about sense pleasures and sense objects, he says you're a hypocrite. Remember that verse? Mityachara. Mityachara means you're a hypocrite. You are vimudhatma. You think you are actionless, but you are actually deluded. So 9th to 19th verse, Krishna discusses the karma yoga topic in detail. And we know this, the combination of karma yoga, what is it? Proper activity with proper attitude equals karma yoga. So in the 9th verse, he compares our activity in life to a yajna, a fire ritual. So it's a very beautiful analogy. He says, yajnat karmananto nyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha. He goes on there. Yajnaha, he says in that verse, is Ishvaraha. Yajnartat, you're doing it for Ishvara. You're doing this activity as an offering to Ishvara, to the yajna, for the sake of that yajna. And Mukta Sangaha, which means without worrying for the results. What do you offer into the fire of Ishvara? You offer your likes and dislikes. Because you say, I offer my like, I'm doing what is to be done. I offer my dislike, because whatever I get as a result, it is in your hands. You know what is better for me. You're telling the order of the universe of karma and dharma. So from these sections, it trains the mind to accept facts and keep doing what is to be done. That is the whole idea in this section. Accept facts, do what is to be done. Accept facts, do what is to be done. So from 10th to 15th verse, we see another beautiful idea Krishna brings in, which is I called it the Vedic ecology verses. How do I live in harmony with this universe? I see the universe as a natural forces and laws, and they're called devatas, or the gods of nature. The very nature that we see is the material cause of Ishvara, the Lord. So we saw the Vedic culture, needs, it actually is based on a lot of nature worship. So these verses are very important because they bring in this idea of reciprocal behavior. So I offer and the devas bless me back. I offer, the devas bless me back. And in 16th verse, he talks about this cosmic wheel, evam pravartitam chakram. It is always turning. It is always spinning. It's already in motion, which you are the one. You are a cog in that wheel. Everyone is a part of the motion of that wheel. And how do I help to turn that wheel? I do what is to be done by me. Wherever I find my life unfolding, what is to be done, I do that while offering my likes and dislikes into the fire, the yajna of Ishvara. So Krishna is very, beautifully bringing in this idea of work as worship here, and seeing that your worship is for the whole universe. It is not limited to one person or one thing. It is for the whole universe. And he also says here the opposite. If you don't live this type of lifestyle that I am discussing, Krishna says, you will definitely die off and be born again in another body, and you have to go through the same pains again and again because you are still in that cycle, you're stuck. So this verses talks about this. In the 17th and 18th verse, he changes the topic. He talks about how a wise person will continue activity in life. Although there is nothing for a wise person to be done, naiva tasya kritenartaha na kriteneha kaschana. He is already reveling in himself. He is happy with himself. There is nothing to be done for him, but he brings in a very important word, loka sangraham. A wise person will always act for the welfare of others. So from 20 to 29, we saw how the wise person becomes a role model for the otherwise. And Krishna in these verses uses himself also as a role model. He says that this King Janaka, the king who had a lot of administrative duties, who had a whole kingdom to run. He was a wise person. Inside, he was absolutely free, but he worked for others. And in the 21st verse, Krishna talks about leadership now. The wise person, and even himself, he has to set an example for other people following. So Arjuna also, he said, you are such a recognized person in society. You have such a position and power. You cannot set this type of example by running off. The moment Arjuna runs off from the battle, others will also follow. So Krishna says, Yadyadacharati shreshtaha tattadevetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastadanu vartate. Very famous verse. However, a leader behaves. Leader means a person who is looked up to by society. Other people will follow, will emulate, will do what that person does. So Krishna warns the people in leadership positions, be careful, because with power comes responsibility. You are responsible for others. And so in 22 to 26, Krishna brings himself in and says that I also, even though there's nothing to do for me in three worlds, I am an incarnation of divinity. I don't need to act. But look at me, I'm so active. I do everything for the Loka Sangraha. He says, if I don't act also, he says, Sankarasya cha karta syat. Sankarasya karta syat. I will create confusion in the minds of people. Upahanyamimaf prajaha. I will destroy people. So I have to set an example to all, because I am here for teaching, not only through the words I speak, but through my actions. So actions speak louder than words. There is a saying in English, right? This is what Krishna says in these verses. My actions also will be as a tool, role model for others. 26th verse, he talks about how a wise person, acts when dealing with other people. How he is very compassionate. How he doesn't disturb the thinking of the otherwise. Na buddhi bedam na janayet. So he does not disturb the thinking of people who are trapped in the ocean of samsara of doing. Then how does he help? Because he knows they're not ready. They're stuck to desire fulfillment. Most humanity are not ready to come out of it. So by preaching, by standing, in Hyde Park Corner, Speaker's Corner, if Krishna was around today's day and age, by going to Hyde Park Corner and standing there and talking about Gita verses is not going to help, because everybody is stuck in that desire fulfillment. So he says here, I and wise people will not disturb others' thinking. In fact, I will help them, teach them how to act in life in order for them to be successful. So very beautifully, a wise person is a very compassionate person. He knows that this is not going to really help the otherwise, but because they are still at that level, he will make sure he teaches them how to act in the transactional reality in the correct way. So 27, 28, 29, he changes the topic again. He brings in the first topic he introduced at the beginning about Prakriti, the material cause of the universe. These verses, he talks about the body, mind, senses being a modification of this material cause. And he says we cannot, under the sway of the gunas, the constituents of Prakriti, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, we will be definitely driven to activity and we get bound. So he says that Prakrite kriyamanani gunaih karmasu sarvashaha. The problem is, even though the body, mind, sense complex, gets pushed into activity. The main problem in this verse, he says, is that I take myself to be the doer of those activities. Ahankara vimudhatma. So I think I am the doer and I get trapped. So Bhagavan says here, this is the key. You think you are the doer, so you work for the karma palam, and your I can never be fulfilled by doing. So he says, you are deluded once you get trapped, but you can't help being deluded because you don't know otherwise. In the 28th verse, he gives a contrast to the previous verse. I mean, he says that the one who knows the self is much more than this body, mind, senses. Such a person is a jnani. An ignorant person takes the body, mind, senses to be ajnani, but the one who knows, he knows the self is limitless consciousness. He is unaffected by activity. 30 to 35, he summarizes the karma yoga topic mainly in verse 30. It's a very beautiful verse, very important verse. Krishna says, Mai sarvani karmani sannyasyatyatma chetasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigatajvaraha. Understand Adhyatma Chetasa with a discriminative mind, know your goal to be moksha, and Mai Sarvani Karmani, renounce all your activity unto me. So, with the level of action, Bhagavan again talks about renouncing all the actions unto him, means your likes and dislikes where activity is concerned. Nirashihi means don't hope, don't keep praying for results. Don't keep thinking about the results and wishing for them. Nirashihi. I will give what you need in that moment. Nirmama. Don't keep saying mine, mine. When once you've done the action, don't claim it as yours. It belongs to Ishvara now. Finished. Forget it. Do the action. 100% you put your effort. Forget it. Now it's Ishvara's. Nirmama. Vigatatjvaraha. Don't feel anxious. Don't worry. Don't worry if you're going to fail. Vigatajvaraha, without fever, without panic. Let Ishvara decide. So very beautiful verse he brings up here. This Karma Yoga 31, 32 also. Live this lifestyle, he again emphasizes, for your spiritual life, because that will release you from this cycle of becoming. Don't criticize, he says in these verses, the teachings, even if they don't work immediately. Keep trying. We usually become critical because we don't see immediate results, right? Bhagavan saying, don't have this critical thinking. You let the teaching work. It takes long time for it to work, but keep with it. Don't let it go. And this lifestyle is going to save you. He uses the word shraddhavantaha. Commit yourself to this. Commit yourself through pending discovery. So you will discover, but commit yourself first and don't give up. So the 33rd verse, he changes again the topic. Arjuna expresses a doubt because he says, the doubt in Arjuna is because he's been listening to what Krishna has been saying. He says, what is the use for mental purification of this karma yoga if everything is governed by Prakriti, nature? So it shows, this doubt shows that Arjuna has been listening to Krishna. What is the use? So Krishna says here, you think there is no control. There is no control over your thoughts, the desires as they rise. But he says, you can manage your likes and dislikes. In 34th verse, he says, Indriyasyendriyasyarte ragadvesho vyavastito tayor navashama gachet tauhyasya paripantino. The binding likes and dislikes are your greatest enemies. So even though Prakriti pushes you into action, your mind now has the ability to manage your likes and dislikes. Whole of Gita is about raga dvesha management. Actually, it is a management text, not in the business management. It is a self-management text. So transform your nature through the practices. It is possible, Krishna says. Don't think it is impossible. It is difficult, but it is possible. You understand through knowledge that the enemies of the mind are your likes and dislikes. Tayor navashamagachet. Don't come under their sway. The only way is to see Ishvara in everything. There is no other way to not come under their sway. So that is why Karma Yoga connects to this verse. Vigilantly, we live a life, alert life, being aware of our strong likes and dislikes, and still continue to do what is to be done. So these verses, the essence of these verses is Krishna saying, happiness doesn't lie in doing what you like to do always, but in liking what you have to do. So Arjuna now in the next verses, he says that, again, another doubt. He says, why do I do the wrong thing anyway? What pushes me to go against dharma? I know it is incorrect, but some force is just pushing me to go against dharma. So we saw in the 36th verse, Krishna talks about two forces that bring in other negative forces within us, which is kamaha, binding desire, which is followed always by krodha, anger, because anger is the obstacle, is the outcome of any obstacle to my desire fulfillment. Anger is definitely born. And Bhagavan says, when there's too much rajas in the mind, you will definitely have this kama, krodha as blockages in your spiritual life. Your willpower goes. So he says, again, these are the great sinner. Anger is a mahapapma. And desire is mahashanaha, insatiable. So he uses these verses in these verses and he uses these words in these verses, and from 38 onwards, I won't sum that up because we have just seen recently, Krishna talks about the levels of desire and how to manage them using our free will. So beautifully you can see the unfoldment of the third chapter, all about living in the world, all about acting in the world, all about managing myself. Third chapter is a very important chapter when you are active in the world. I would really suggest you go over the verses, look at the flow of it in the summary, have a read of the summary. It is more elaborate than what I have said now. Now I've just gone over briefly the verses, but read over that and implement. These are the things that one can implement in life. You can't implement being Atma in your life because you're already Atma. So I cannot practice being Atma. People often ask, how do I practice Vedanta? Vedanta you cannot really practice, but the tools to purify your mind and body and senses, you can practice. That's why Gita becomes a practical text. Now, I am sure all people listening to this Gita class will understand the importance of alert and vigilant living. You are the policeman of your mind, actually. You are the one who can see, as the thought arises, the Gita verses should come and bless you. That's how knowledge blesses. No, desire, what is it going to lead to? Think of it. People may think you're weird, but it doesn't matter because you are here for spiritual growth. And you watch what you do, what you act, then you find you become the master of yourself. Even discovering self-mastery is a great, great accomplishment in one lifetime, right? So that requires your effort. Third chapter, I call it the effort chapter because you need to make some efforts. So with that, tomorrow we will start the fourth chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And I think next week, we're going to have this Navaratri coming soon. I have to check the dates again, but it is coming. And Navaratri is the 9 days for the goddess, right? It's a very famous festival in India and also celebrated by Indians abroad. I will be doing Gita Yajna for the 9 days, which means daily I will have evening class, Bhagavad Gita. And half an hour before, because during COVID, we used to celebrate Navaratri like this, half an hour daily, we will have chanting for Devi. So people at home can also join. Those who have joined those sessions know what we do. So we do the chanting. I share the documents. So whoever would like to join for that, it's not compulsory. You can join half an hour before. During Navaratri, I will have daily one session. So you'll have a full, because we're running behind on our completion. I have a mathematics teacher here who has given me a breakdown of the verses that we have to cover still. So Navaratri is a good time to cover a full entire chapter. So let us get through the 4th chapter. See you tomorrow. We'll begin that. Hari Om. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah. Sarve Santu Niramayah. Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Asato Ma Satgamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate. Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Namaste. See you tomorrow.